All right, welcome to herptalkradio. I'm your host, Matthew. With me, as always, we have Miss Peggy and our guest, Aaron Capules. Oh, man, I'm going to have messed that up. It's okay. Anyway, this week, how has it been, Peggy? Because it's been more than 1 week. Like, it's been, what, 2 at least, it feels like.
I can't keep track. I'm too busy with too many rescues. Just received another one yesterday, and ironically, I was at the vet getting all the 10 juveniles that are ready for release, their vet check and lab results back. They're all free of disease and all clear-eyed and not bushy-tailed, but the vet says they're ready for release. So I contacted the game fish and park contacts. And they must be busy. I haven't heard back from anyone, but it's been less than 24 hours. But then as I was at the vet, a person called in saying, we just found an injured turtle on the road. Can we bring it in for a checkup? And so then my vet and I consulted, and we had her send a picture of the turtle to see if we could save it first. Otherwise, if it looks like we can't, like major organs have been destroyed, we asked them to simply put it in a container, then in the freezer, and it will slowly, mercifully, lose pain sensation and then die. And but just like the male that I took in a couple of weeks ago, this one was just slightly clipped on one side, a cracked bridge, but no displacement. So I'm monitoring her, dry docking her, and then giving her drinks of water just to make sure that her body cavity hasn't been punctured and water leaking in and putting pressure on the organs, all that sort of stuff. But she's, she's really, eating really well and moving, completely normally. So I think she'll be ready for release in, 2 to 3 weeks, like the male. So yeah, and out herping, heard. I'm sure Aaron, you know this sound, and I'll try to mimic it.
Yeah. That was a pretty good one.
And I said, okay, that was got to be a major frog. And so we found it, about the size of a dinner plate.
Wow.
Yeah, nice. And I took a picture of it, this big, dark, army green frog with a bright green head that, had to be at least, 8 inches, and but Joe and I had never heard one call like that, but that deep of a bass of voice, we figured it had to be a very large frog.
Yeah.
But that was my excitement for the week. And Matthew, how was your week?
My couple of weeks have been really interesting. I went and got my reptiles, so that's good. I finally have my reptiles. Yeah, that was a quick, very painful trip. Holy cow. 72, under 72 hours there and back. And it's 26 hours of drive. So you're talking, less than stopping once. Yeah, I was stopping once. So
yeah, can't imagine. And you still have the soft shell?
That's still up in South Dakota.
Oh, okay, that little
Grandma's gonna keep on to that for a little while.
Such a cute little hatchling.
Yeah, he's getting big though. Holy cow.
Cool.
Yeah. Other than that, not much.
Not much.
It's been working.
Excellent.
So I'm very excited to talk about the Frog Week.
Yeah.
Actually. Because those videos are of top quality and top production level, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you.
Yes.
Did you guys both get the chance to check them out early, or was it just you, Matt?
No, I sent them to Pegs. I'll let her speak.
Yeah, I don't think I got them, but I haven't had the time to be online hardly at all this week with just making habitats and housing and trying to get all the paperwork done and stuff. So yeah, now this week I have free to watch. So you can describe what I've missed there, Aaron.
Well, I guess first what I want to hear from Matt, like since you got the chance to see like the 4 major episodes, I mean, what was your thought? Like which one you can spoil some things, but like which one do you think was your most favorite, I guess, out of the 4?
I just like the tree frogs,
The
but
Great Tree
that's just
Frog
because I
episode.
like tree frogs. So I like tree frogs. So the tree frog video was my favorite, but that's just because that's what I like the most.
If
All the production quality on all the videos, you had to have spent a ton of time into that. That's what blew me away. And actually, it was the fact that I could just sit there and watch it and it'd pull other people in, which just goes to show that the production quality is of a high level, which you absolutely need high quality. High quality content makes like gets somewhere in the world. It's not just cell phone videos anymore on YouTube. If you make something really good and very, very, yeah, very good like you did here, um, it's gonna do really well. And I really hope it does for you.
Thank you. Yeah, some of
Yeah.
those are like slow burns. It's kind of funny because you'd think, I don't know, a lot. I was thinking about this today too. Like a lot of us want that self gratification, like a couple thousand views right away, right? And of course, that's at some point what we'd like to get to. But you know, I've made videos earlier this year that were very impressive. I thought for the pet care show, and I got like under 100 views. I look back today and they're like 400 views, and it's like, well, where are they going to be at by the end of the year? So
Right.
I don't know why. Um, but I can say that my fan base, or at least the followers on YouTube, it seems like they must get the notifications late or people find the videos late. But I really appreciate you saying that. And Matt, if it makes you feel better, the Great Tree Frog episode is literally the main episode for Frog Week this year. So
Oh,
you have pretty
awesome.
good taste if you like the actual, like, the prime time episode.
Yeah.
Well, I think with YouTube, a lot has to do with sharing. I know that once I see a video, I put it on my Black Hills Turtle Forum Facebook page, and and really talk about it, and then more people see it, especially when we can post it, on Rapid City reptile people, and then South Dakota reptiles, that sort of thing. It just gets shared more and more, especially the ones that really grab people. Like now, the first one I'm going to watch now is going to be the tree frog one.
Comes
And
out tomorrow.
oh, okay, excellent. How did you share those with me, Matt? That I haven't.
I shared them to you on Instagram when he sent them to me, and he sent them to me
Month ago.
Oh
a
my!
month ago.
Oh wow! Yeah, I've
Yeah.
been so neglectful of my social media, and I think it's, yeah, I've been,
It's okay.
the job that I retired from had a lot of my attention over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I didn't expect that, but I think I'm a little free now. I'm back to being retired again, so I can get back into my interests. And after seeing that plate-sized frog, so um, curious, what could you tell by my description of a big plate-sized army green with a bright grass green head? What type of bullfrog that was?
Well, I just think it was a bullfrog, especially because you're in South Dakota where you saw it, right?
Yes.
I don't believe that the pig frog is up that way, and it wouldn't be as big as a bullfrog, although they can get very large themselves. But bullfrogs are actually an animal that I tried for a while to stay away from, actually, because it's kind of that same uh, type of fantasy, I guess, Shark Week does with the white shark, with the great
Mhm.
white shark. They want to make it a big scary monster, and everybody knows the great white shark from Jaws. Well, I mean, you think of frogs and toads in the Northeast, and the bullfrog is heads and shoulders like the main one. So, being a predator of other frogs, that could mean that we could make an outrageous story about the bullfrog, but I tried to stay away from that because I don't want people to look at them either as monsters or as like unfit to live, like, you know, and there's ways that we could tell a story and that's irresponsible of making them look like a nuisance animal. So this is actually the first year now that the nonprofit owns Frog Week, and I'm making these videos for the nonprofit, that we wanted to actually make a bullfrog episode. And just in the same breath of what I told you, I wanted to make sure that it still was telling the right story. Like, this was probably the most on, like, literal, I don't know, like, this is probably the most raw that I could tell a story about the bullfrogs, because they do come to the pond and they do eat the American toads. And as you guys, well, Matt, I know you've seen some of the episodes. The American toads are one of our 4 target species. It's a 7-year breeding program, bringing them back from pretty much not existing in a suburban neighborhood. So there's a lot there. You know, we could demonize the bullfrogs because they kind of are a nuisance to the breeding program, but they're a native species and they also deserve the right to live. So what do you do with that? Like, how do you tell a story about a predator that still deserves its own right to live, that we still actually will rescue if it's in trouble, and tell how it's impacting probably the main animal that I'm doing conservation for? So I think that's going to be the dark horse episode. I didn't let the media watch that one. So Matt has no idea actually what to expect with that. But I hope people will see it, and I hope they'll see like the integrity that I tried to bring to that episode, because I didn't want people to think that I'm making them out to be a monster, but I also want people to know that they do eat other frogs. And I didn't get the chance to show that. Thankfully, I didn't see that, but you'd be able to see the impact that it's had on the toads. It will definitely show up at the pond in the episode that it comes out. That will be on Friday, I believe, or Saturday. It's episode 6, so that'd be Saturday.
Now, what age class of frogs does the bullfrog eat? All the way up through adulthood?
All of them.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll take them on as soon as they come out of the water.
Oh, okay. And so they feed on land and not in the water itself.
They can sit in the water and eat, but I mean, they don't feed underwater. No, they have to eat like on the surface.
Okay. I'm sure they eat baby turtles too, by the size of the one that we saw.
Yeah, we've seen that they'll eat like newly hatched snapping turtles.
Wow.
They'll take on catfish in marginal areas, like small catfish. We were watching the bullfrogs out in a cove, actually, and it was probably about 6 inches deep of water. And they were sitting there as the baby catfish were coming in, and they were just picking them off like an ant nest. It was nuts how fast they were just taking them and taking them and taking them. This was a couple years ago, but I mean, it's a common thing out there probably.
I know. I think we have an invasive bullfrog here. I'll have to look into that more. I don't know if this one was one of them or not, but yeah. Now that I'm back to being mostly semi-retired, I have more chance to read up on other subjects again of my liking. So,
Yeah.
but so now your Frog Week, you put out an episode Sunday through Saturday.
No, actually, I've put them out Monday through Sunday. The reason why I started during the week instead of on the weekend is we thought that more people would be interested in watching it instead of it being on a Sunday. That was like talking with some businesses. They thought that was the right way to go. I understand that it makes more sense to actually start it on a Sunday, but I just, from what the advice was and the communication I had with different places this year and last year, they just like the idea of starting on a Monday, because if places are going to share content and those marketing people and the social media people are off, then I have to wait till Monday for them to share things anyway. Oh. So it kind of has to fall in line with the workday for those businesses.
Gotcha. And how long do you do all your research and field work?
6 months.
6 months. Wow. Okay. And so I haven't seen any of them yet. So it's, do you start with, you cover one species per episode, or how many species per episode do you work on?
Well, for the main episodes, you're going to see that it's one general idea around one species. So, like, we have 4 target species: the wood frog, the American toad, the pickerel frog, and the eastern gray tree frog. And then we also have an episode with the bullfrogs, and it's kind of a dual episode because the American toads and the bullfrogs are in it. But once you get to episodes 7 and 8, and we start getting later into the year, I started showcasing more of like the chaos that was happening, because we ended up getting some really crazy rain, and that led to a lot of frogs and toads either coming out for the first time or coming out for a second time, and things just exploded. So I wanted to show that as it was happening, plus what we were doing in the community. So if we went to events, if we had night hikes, if we had any festivals that we were at, which it's all going to be in those last 2 episodes. I mean, I have a lot to unpack for all the stuff that was going on for those months. And I want people to see how fast paced it got from episode 7 to 8, with so much activity, so much happening, like literally like running through all of this. So episode 7 and 8 have a different pace because there's just a lot more activity, but the general theme is to focus around like one species to tell the story.
Okay, excellent. I had another question that skipped me. Now, are you going on those 4 species? Are you doing captive breeding programs on all 4 of them, or none of them?
No, we're actually doing in the field head starting programs where we have ponds and artificial pools that I've either helped or I manage, and we actually help those adults to get to the breeding grounds and then take care of the tadpoles once they're in the vernal pools. So once the vernal pools start to dry up, I'll either move them to a permanent body of water, or I can, if they're at the house, I can move them. Like I can care for them. Like if we get a really bad rainstorm and the pools are going to overflow, I have to drain them. Or if it's like really hot and it dries and the water evaporates, then I have to fill them up. So I mean, it's a lot of managing the tadpoles, but we're looking right now on ways how we can help the pickerel frog and the gray tree frog. I think the next plan of action by the end of this year, after frog, because there's still work that has to be done, I'm going to start going and building artificial pools to attract 2 different species. We're hoping that we can get the wood frogs in the early spring and that they'll metamorphosis and they'll get out of the water, and then the gray tree frogs will come. That's kind of the hope, is that we can create an artificial pool that helps both of them to succeed. I know that for a fact, the American toads, if the wood frogs breed there first, that the American toads won't reproduce there. So that's because wood frog tadpoles are carnivorous. They'll eat the others. So toads and gray tree frogs, their tadpoles are not carnivorous. They can actually lay eggs side by side and nothing happens. But the thought might be that I have to build 2 artificial pools each place, so that way if the toads do want to use the pools, then we can move them back and forth and try to help the toad tadpoles succeed just like the others.
Interesting. And so you're building some of this on your property and then on a different property, so that you have 2 areas in case one area goes bad?
Well, not necessarily. So I have 3 of those artificial pools that are on our property, but there are multiple neighbors and people that are in the Frog Week community that have asked me to come out and do property visits, and they want me to build it on their property. So no, we're going to be in multiple counties, and this will mean that we're going to have management of, I don't know, maybe like 10 pools or more, and we're talking multiple places. So it's going to really be interesting next year when we're trying to figure out who's pioneering these vernal pools or these artificial pools. I have a lot of aquatic vegetation that I'm going to deliver after these pools are, like, the hole is dug and these pools are put in, and then we're put the plants in, because it's just like you guys keeping animals in captivity. You want to have a bioactive enclosure because it helps everything to stay healthier. It's the same thing when you introduce like pond plants into a pool of water. The tadpoles can eat the vegetation. It also brings invertebrates and The water quality is significantly better. It also helps to remove algae. So, like for example, at my house, there's one pool that I took everything out of. It's just literally water and tadpoles. Well, it had 3 algae blooms and killed the tadpoles in 2 rounds. But the 2 pools that didn't have, I'm sorry, the 2 pools that did have the plants had no algae blooms, and the tadpoles have been in there for about 4 months. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, yeah. It's as close to nature as you can get is always best for animals and for us. You know? I know on my Black Hills Turtle Forum page, I'm going to be posting um, one thing that the biochemist that I used to work for, she had done extensive research into what was going or what is going into animal feeds, and that includes, for livestock and pets and some of our human foods, and what is wrong with certain ingredients that sadly you find in a lot of foods here in the United States that you don't find over in Europe. And so I'll be posting that. And it makes for a lot of work for people who especially are breeding and want their animals to be at their highest in fertility. That, they basically, see that they should find other foods to add to what they thought was a good feed program. Because I hear from a lot of breeders that said, okay, I've had a lot of infertility this year, and so the first thing I do is, have you changed your feed program, or has your feed program gone on a long time, where now, you're seeing the buildup of X, Y, and Z because of these food sources. And so it's I think my time will be less intense by posting that on my page, so that a lot of my time isn't spent. Although I do enjoy, helping people with nutrition, because once they see their animals turn around in health, then they apply that to their family's life too. Like, oh well, everyone in our family now, all of our thyroids have shut down, even our 8-year-old son. And I go, and you're in farming? And they go, yeah. And I go, are you sod farmers? They go, how did you know? And I go, yeah, only glyphosate will take out all of your thyroids, especially on an 8-year-old. And so, yeah, so a lot of, my talk with my human biochem clients had to do with, reactivating their thyroids, and which, help regulate, sexual hormones too. And so that's what I'm seeing in the turtle breeding community. A lot of the pellet foods have tons of glyphosate covered grains. And so it takes a while for the harm to build up. And so I'm just wondering, especially with amphibians and water sources, but you're mostly starting the pools, putting in the plants, and then the arthropods and the crustacea and everything. I'm sure those help colonize the pools, because the crustaceans are usually, and the mollusks are attached to a lot of those plants.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring that up. I was also asked how the mosquito life is up at those pools. And I think this is a really interesting point for people to hear. So I can go up there any time of the day. I can go up there at night, like as the sun's setting right now, and I don't have any mosquitoes. And the reason why is because the wood frog tadpoles are carnivorous, and they're eating the mosquito larvae at a very high rate. The bigger the tadpoles are getting, the more they need to eat the mosquito larvae. So that's also something that's, in my opinion, beneficial. Like, I know there's a lot of controversy about having pools in backyards, but I mean, when you have something so voracious as a ranted tadpole, they're going to eat and they're going to pick them apart. So, I mean, they even eat other tadpoles. So a little mosquito larvae is nothing to them. It's probably an appetizer.
Well, and I know some mosquitoes, if they sense that there are a lot of minnows or tadpoles in certain pools, they won't even lay there.
It could be that too.
They avoid pools like that. It's hard to think that an insect could learn something like that. But yeah, that's from what I just read on the game fish and parks. If you're going to put in a fishing pond, and game fishing parks will help you stock, bass and bluegill pond. They also say, stock these minnows and it'll keep the mosquitoes down and, that sort of thing. So that's what's really nice about South Dakota Game Fishing Parks. They'll say, oh, you want to have you know, start a recreational fishing pond on your place. Boy, they're there to help you and to keep the mosquitoes in control. And from a person, me, who's had West Nile 3 times, it's like, I'm so glad that type of efforts, are being done to keep the mosquitoes at bay.
I think a good question into that would be, how do you think like agriculture is playing a role? Because I know you touch on it in Frog Week a bit, that like the fertilizers and stuff, that's just going right into the water source of the frog. So like, yeah, I don't know where I'm going, but somewhere down that road.
Yeah, that would cause algae.
That can't be.
The fertilizer would cause the algae blooms, and the pesticides, the insecticides are neurotoxins. The herbicides are hormone disruptors. So yeah, it would affect, any pond life if they don't. There used to be laws that you can't spray within X amount of feet of marshes and ponds, or what they used to call prairie potholes, to protect, not only our local wildlife, but migrating waterfowl. So is that in your neck of the woods too, Aaron, that you're working in that area with the agriculture, or your state is?
Well, for agriculture, I can tell you that it has negatively impacted a handful of species. So has urban sprawl. But if we're talking agriculture, I think that the pesticides and the herbicides and different things that they're using on the farms has wiped out a species called the northern leopard frog up here in most of its like historic range. And there could be other reasons, like maybe bullfrogs became more abundant and pollution has risen and people have dug out their ponds or filled them in. There's a lot of different reasons, but the agriculture business, yeah, when you kill the prey item for the animal and then you take away its home, or if you pollute its habitat, like where especially the breeding grounds, then it's detrimental to them. And last year there was talk of an agency that was going to fill in 2 of the most notorious vernal pools on the top of a mountain, and I kind of lobbied a little bit with that, and thankfully they're still there, and they both produced about 400 egg clutches of wood frogs in the beginning of the year. It's probably the only place where I can go that I know there is going to be a deafening chorus of wood frogs, more than spring peepers. They actually drown out the spring peepers. They only reproduced one night this year. Like everybody was done after one night, which was unbelievable that 400 eggs were laid in one night.
Wow.
That is kind of crazy.
Yeah, one of the ponds that we emptied last year, it was, well, I should say, rescued the turtles from a drying pond. This year we went back. We had tons of snow and rain this spring, and the pond was really full, although it's drying somewhat again. But I don't know if it'll dry completely this year. But we went back there. We see it about twice a month, sometimes once a week. And now it's just full of leopard frogs and the turtles that had been eggs when we were there rescuing the live turtles. And so it was recolonized by turtles with hatchlings, although 3 adult turtles have shown up. And I'm not going to catch them unless we have to move them again, and be curious to find out if those were the turtles I had moved before, because I photographed the ones I moved before, and to find out if they migrated back to this pond because it gets so full of tadpoles and frogs that they think it's feast time. And it's just, that someone could, a post-grad student could write a master's on turtle migration in and out of that pond. But yeah, I think here in western South Dakota, because we have more rangeland, cattle and sheep being produced and not actual crop farming, we have a lot of a good healthy leopard frog population wherever we travel, we see tons of leopard frogs. But I'm concerned now. I've never seen these bullfrogs before, and now I've seen two in some of our favorite ponds that we visit, and that concerns me that there's more out there.
If they are invasive, that's one of the ways that they'll cause a decline in the leopard frog. That's one of their top predators in the native range is the bullfrog.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that after we close tonight, and then if indeed what any method that you could think of to help catch the bullfrogs.
Well, first I'd say this: if you can catch them, it's becoming a bigger topic now than it ever has before. But people are doing this with cane toads and Cuban tree frogs. If you catch them, you could reach out to a college or some organization that wants to use them as ambassador animals, and they could be used as invasive species, like as a talking point for people to educate the public about why you shouldn't actually let these guys go, or maybe a nonprofit wants to actually use them for something as a pet. I think that would be a really good way to dispose of them if you can, instead of just, everybody's going to say just kill them, and you can, but if you can find a home or find something, then I think that's probably going to be a better method. If you have the time and the resources to do it.
Oh yeah.
But if not, it is what it is. You go gigging and you can eat them. But I was just saying, like, best case scenario for them is that they end up in the hands of somebody who actually wants them and can use them for something like colleges or nonprofits. But honestly, I would say you'd want to go and catch them at night, because if you try during the day, they're going to be really alert and they're going to be more hesitant. At night, they're a little bit more bold. They're a little, like, they might even be out of the water. So if you got a net and you saw them, I'd go like on a semi-rainy night or after a heavy rain, because they might not be by the water. They might actually be in the fields or up from the pond, and it'd be easier to just put the net over it. It might not even react to the net, and then you could just catch it.
I think I could have snuck up on this one had I had my big fisherman's net there, because he was basking on a rock,
Mm-hmm.
and it was hot, and I thought that was really odd. Could it be ill that it was here's a big frog basking on a rock, and it was 86 degrees, and so I know on the rock it had to get up to 95, close to 100 easy.
Was it a cold night the night before?
No, this was in the cold night before. Yeah, we've been having nights down in the 60s, even though it was getting up into the 90s. So
he could have been. There's a couple of things. They can bask. It's not uncommon for pond frogs to do that, but maybe he was trying to warm his body temperature, or maybe he was trying to dry himself out, because if they stay too wet, they can get bacterial infections. So they do a really good job in the wild of regulating how much moisture they actually need. That's why they sit out of the pond for a long period of time and get themselves really dry, so that way they don't get sick.
Okay. I bet that's what he was doing. Yeah. I know on our Rapid City Reptile People Facebook page, someone was asking if anyone has any frogs for sale, and I'll have to contact that person. Hey, I'll help you catch 2 bullfrogs if you want them.
Yeah.
I don't know if they were looking for something smaller, because to build a habitat for these big frogs, Joel was like, I got to see it. I think he thought that I was stretching my size estimate. He saw it's like, oh man.
No, they get that big. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I'd say for one of them a 75-gallon minimum, because they occupy such large. Look how big the animal is to begin with.
Yeah, I was thinking larger than a 75.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. It's just if somebody wants them, how much are they willing to spend? Yeah. And that's the sad thing. Like, you can't necessarily guarantee somebody would get like a 200-gallon or a 400-gallon, but a 75, they're on sale at Petco. It's not as unreasonable as it was like 10 years ago. Somebody might invest in a 75. And if it's just for one of the bullfrogs, that bullfrog can be as lazy as it wants. It can bask and it can live a good life in that. I wouldn't think anything less than that would be acceptable for one, but I know that's like a bare minimum at least.
And how long do bullfrogs live?
I mean, it can go well over 50 years.
Wow.
Yeah, he's probably old. He's probably an older bullfrog to be at that size. It takes them a while to get there.
Well, there you go. It would be like a gator frog. That's a frog for you there, Matthew. You like every animal that's huge.
Oh, I love me the gators, that's for sure.
Well, now you're in South Carolina, so you could have some.
Yeah, no, there's a nice little fish shack down here that's got a pound of shrimp for $10. So
wow.
I need to go there and get some shrimp. And they have gator. They got all sorts of good old coastal food.
Yeah. Well, when I was in Florida, the deep fried gator, and I'm like, okay, I got to try this. Like, oh my, that was good. But yeah. So for our vegan viewers, I'm sorry. But yeah.
Well, I find it funny because like we're okay with chicken, but then if like I don't know, the kid, the oldest son, he just like, no, we can't eat that bird because that's not okay. But you eat a chicken or you eat other meat. What's wrong with this meat? Why can't you eat this? I don't get the concept.
Yeah. Well, it's the one thing that I like. Joel and I started eating bison. Friends of ours.
Oh yeah, bison's really good.
Yeah, and they field kill the animal, and it's interesting because you can see their video on Wild Idea Buffalo Ranch, and they do what they show as their humane kill, and so they go out to the herd. They select usually a young male animal, and they have a sharpshooter that puts one bullet in the head, and the animal just like drops. And all the animals, you'd think that all the rest of the bison in the herd would stampede away, but no. They just, they look at the animal and just keep on grazing 5 feet from it, and then the truck pulls up, and then they have a butcher truck that pulls up too, and then they start, field dressing the animal right there. And so, if Joel and I were to buy a whole bison for a freezer, that one animal, that one kill would last us years, and you'd have to, quarter the animal for, 4 family units, and then you would get through it in a, 1 to 2 years without getting the freezer burn into that meat. And so and wild bovine, and that includes the yak and the bison and the wild buffalo, the actual buffaloes of India and Africa. They have more amino acids than even our domestic cattle do. They have 2 more amino acids that, if your body is healthy, you can make those essential amino acids by combining 2 others. But the bison and buffalo and yak, they have those 2 amino acids in their protein profile. So for people like myself who have digestive issues, if I really need really good protein source, I always eat bison. And I know this is off the topic of frogs, but this one gal that I knew that was a vegan, and she's a fellow physics student. She was really, I would say, mentally dull. And then I said, you really need to eat, your finals are coming up. You really need to eat just, a meatball of bison a week, just one little meatball a week. And she goes, okay, I'll buy a pound of burger. Will burger work? And I go, yeah. So then the next week, 2 weeks later, I saw her. She was like a different person, and just so sharp and wit and everything. She goes, "Oh my God, everybody's telling me I'm different." And I go, "You are. You were like the Walking Dead for the last year I've known you, and now all of a sudden, oh my God, she could, take on a news, she could be a media person all of a sudden." Yeah, it was just amazing, and our brains need that. We evolved eating that, and so this is why we get back to Frog Week, and people like yourself that, what do these animals need to survive ecologically? And you've got that down. Well, we humans aren't any different. How did we evolve? We evolved as meat eaters, and that's how our brains got larger than, our more primate relatives. So, yeah. And so that's why we enjoy getting guests like you on who understand that to have successful captive programs, you need to really know the natural history of animals, to really be successful in their husbandry.
No, I completely agree with that. There's just so much there to unpack even.
Yeah. It's I've just seen, working for a nutritional biochemist for 14 years, what I learned that made me get, was I was able to get off, all prescription medication by just finding out what foods I needed to eat and what foods I needed to avoid. And, and so I didn't have to buy anything from her. And when I tell people, oh, I can fix, that issue that you're having with this diet, like, oh, what are you selling? I'm not selling anything. I'm just telling you what to avoid. And yeah, and that's when it comes to our animals too. Joel and I were out with our dogs this weekend, and this woman just goes, "Well, how old are your pup?" And I go, "Well, this one's 14, and this." She goes, "What?" She goes, it acts like a puppy. And I go, "Well, we don't feed her standard kibble food, which usually kills it, takes about 5 years off a dog's life." And, it's just, you don't feed poisons to yourselves or your animals. And, it's hard, like when you're managing outdoor pools and, the neighbor is, having his his polished chem lawn, what do you do, to protect, the animals that you're raising outside?
Well, the nice thing is I think there's a good agreement with the majority of the places that I'm working with, like the neighbors, that they can probably run a weed eater or weed whacker around the pools, but no spraying. So we're going to have to talk about that. I mean, they might be able to spray parts of their yard, but just not anywhere close to where these pools are. And I think we'll win them over. I don't think that's too hard. This year for Frog Week, we had so many awesome opportunities to work with literally, this is citizen science. We had so many opportunities to work with civilians in Pennsylvania, and you wouldn't believe how much it means to them if they have something like a great tree frog, which in Cambria and Somerset counties in Pennsylvania, it's not common. How they want to take care of it, how people want to actually provide homes. And then we start talking about the pickerel frog, how it's so mysterious. And even though it's in Pennsylvania and it's supposed to be labeled as abundant, you just don't see it as much as some of the other species, at least not in my region. So people are interested in that. People actually want to try to provide a home, or they want to share that with their kids. So yeah, that's something that I think we have the benefit of the doubt because of the way we won the people over. I'll just say this real quick too. I think, Peggy, you're going to be interested in this point. This didn't make it in Frog Week. It's going to get its own sort of segment, but we were able to work with neighbors, and they revealed to us this map turtle that was in our county, in my county, in Cambria County in Pennsylvania. And that was the very first map turtle ever to be seen. So we ended up working with the neighbors to find a second population of great tree frogs, and also to find the map turtle in the county. So that's pretty awesome that, and now we're trying to go look and see, is it the only map turtle or are there others?
Yeah. That's the kind of way our Blandings turtle was only known in one county since, I think it's only been spotted, they say, reported in 52. Although I met a gentleman, a Yankton, Lakota gentleman. He goes, no, there's more out there. Because, he's out there fishing a lot in those waterways in that county. And he says, and he's a biologist, and he goes, you're just afraid to tell anyone there's a endangered species, because then they want to get rid of it, because then they mean that they have to change their farming practices or their whatever practices. So I mean that's sad, and I said, well, if there is a population there and someone wants to get rid of it, I volunteered to have a Blandings turtle assurance colony on my 3 acres, because I haven't ever seen one, but I'm really impressed with the videos that I see of people who do have assurance colonies of them. And I mean, they just come out of the water to beg. They don't just beg in the water when you come by. I saw, I thought, oh, well, that's cute, but you have to wear shoes so they'll nip at your toes. But,
well, the difference with these guys is that the state has them listed as abundant in Pennsylvania, or they're on the list that you're allowed to even actually own a map turtle. And I had to look up this and verify it today, actually. But the reason why that's significant is because, and Matt, you've probably seen from the videos, I tell people, like, I have to mask the locations of where I'm finding these animals or where I'm doing the field work, because people will go and they'll poach these animals and then feed them to other animals or sell them on eBay. So, it'd be my luck that we say, I would never do this, but I'm just saying, like, imagine if somebody came out with us and said, oh, here's where the map turtle is in Cambria County. Somebody could go out there with a 5-gallon bucket, and then they would just take it, and it would be on eBay the next day in some other state or other country. And so that's why, like, I got to make sure that I'm doing my due diligence, that I'm not, like, giving away locations of these things.
And what species of map turtle?
I think it's just the northern map turtle. Okay. I'd have to look. I think that's what it's called. I actually didn't really know a whole lot about them until they presented us with the picture, and then they showed us where it lives. So they hadn't seen it yet this year. They saw it last year, but we're going to start after Frog Week. We're going to go back and hopefully try and see if we could find it again this year. Excellent. But it's an older turtle.
Yeah, we have the false map turtle here in South Dakota, but only on the main river here. And one of the biologists that I in contact with, she was just doing a population survey, and I think she's still, that's her main impetus for the summer for her is, and I tried to find someone to help her in that Lake Oahe, Missouri River, whole big long chain, and I wasn't very successful in finding people to travel the 200 miles to the river to help her with that. And it would have been all volunteer. They had to cover their travel, their food, their lodging, and the game and fish, they were denied assistance. Half of their summer crew, they weren't able to hire, and so they've been a bit understaffed. So bummer.
Yeah.
But, so they were asking for citizen scientists, and trouble is that part of South Dakota is not very populated. We're in Rapid City or Sioux Falls, and then Pierre's a small town, our capital, right in the middle of along the Missouri River, and then really small farm communities. But it's hard to find volunteers to travel there for X amount of days. But she said, hey, one day, weekend, whatever, come help. But
so the tree frog episode comes out tomorrow, you said?
Yes.
What has released so far then?
The wood frog episode, and then it's kind of like a continuation of the wood frog episode, but it also covers the spotted salamander breeding. And then it kind of shows off, I think, the first frog walk, so the first nature hike. The interesting thing about Frog Week this year is that we were able to incorporate the outreach stuff. So because now the nonprofit owns Frog Week, we have the nature hikes and we have the critter talks, like the presentations, and then we also have the actual conservation. So we have like a three-headed monster for how we're actually presenting this to the public and engaging the community. So yeah, I mean, the frog walks, we did about 7 or 8, but letting people kind of, I think this will be special for people who are actually there too, because you'll see like what I was doing before the frog walks and like how it fit into what I was doing. And then like I'm going the same night or the next day and I'm filming more. And it's just kind of like another stop on the bus, if you will, of all of this, like another stop on the journey for telling this story. But yeah, the Wood Frog episodes both are out now. And then the American Toad episode, which there used to be 2 American Toad episodes, but for right now, I thought it was better to kind of make one. And trust me, the American Toads make their presence felt throughout Frog Week this year. So, you know, but yeah. And then tomorrow can get people excited because there's probably 3 big things. The Eastern Gray Tree Frog episode, it showcases me strapping a GoPro to my chest and actually going out to search for the animal and showing people how challenging it could be if these animals are not literally as abundant as the state might think they are in these counties. Like for anybody who's watching this or will watch this, if you have great tree frogs and they're super abundant where you live, you could probably just go outside and hear them or see them. But whenever you are either living or you're somewhere in these areas where they're found, you have to search for them. And so I actually showcase that, how I was able to find them in Cambria County. So that was really awesome. The second thing that's really important is I think the drone work for this episode, because you get a chance to see the deforestation. You get a chance to see how that's another factor for these frogs, what they have to deal with if they're going to survive in the county. So, I mean, I think that shows you from a whole different level. I think people that don't really care about frogs, or if they're kind of indifferent about deforestation, if you see how like the trees are just gone and how it's just becoming an open area, and that could be a problem. That could actually be alarming. And probably one of the scenes that most people will be talking about or interested in is whenever, after I rescued a bunch of these animals and I held out my hand and there's a gray tree frog who just kept jumping on me all night. And I just literally asked him, I said, "Do you want to come with me?" And I just held up my hand, and he's the only frog to this day that actually got on my hand and came with me. So that's in there too. And that's a major deal in Frog Week. He actually has been on some shows and he's been with me in presentations and stuff as an ambassador. So yeah, there's a lot to like about the episode tomorrow.
Well, maybe I could just wag a little fish in front of this big bullfrog and it'll follow me. Jump on
It could. I mean, they'll take them.
Let's get a little frog lure.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I could stop by the fish store and get a frog lure. That's a good idea.
You might catch pike too.
I don't think there's any pikes in that pond.
All you need to do is you need to get a small piece of meat and get a fishing line and tie it around the meat and just dangle it in front of the frog, and the frog will just start coming towards it. So if that's one of the ways you want to do it, you don't even need to use a hook. You could use like live bait or anything.
Excellent. Yeah, I always buy a fishing license, even though, boy, it's been years since I've actually, used it to catch fish. I was using it basically to transport the turtles that I had to rescue to the vet. I'd have like 3 turtles in the car and all injured. So I'll fish for frogs. That'll be interesting. I think I'm trying to think like if I catch one, what'll I do? I've got a big stock tank till I find a home for him.
That would be bigger than a 75-gallon.
Yeah, that'd be nice. It might want to live in there. It might like it.
Actually, be fed the way I usually feed my animals.
Well, he'd love you.
Yeah. This wild injured male turtle I've only had for 2 weeks. He comes to me, whenever he hears me approaching the stock tank. He's up there flapping, because I'm feeding him so many crickets and earthworms. And I try, I always keep the diet wild on the ones that I'm rehabbing for release. And Yeah. You're too tame. Quit being so tame. I don't want him to come to fishermen when he's out there in the wild.
Yeah, that could be bad.
So I have to stand back and throw the night crawlers at him where he can't see me. But anyway.
So what comes after that? Have I seen anything after that? Or I'm sorry, I should have refreshed my episode list. But I'm pretty sure that the gray tree frog one was the third one you sent me. And the fourth one must be after that, right?
Yeah, the fourth one's actually the pickerel frog episode.
Okay.
So it's a little bit, I don't want to say out of order because they were being filmed at the same time. But
right.
Yeah, the pickerel frog episode is next. And you get a chance to kind of see how it began with the nonprofit and how it began, like the idea of why it became our fourth target species and not something else that's a vernal pool breeder. Because, pickerel frog needs a different habitat than the other three. The other three, like all three of them, gray tree frogs, wood frogs, American toads, will lay eggs, and they'll all occur in the same vernal pools depending on where you are. So, a pickerel frog is a very different situation. But you'll get a chance to see what we've actually accomplished and where we're trying to go with it next. I think that's probably going to be the most exciting thing for people, is where we're trying to go next with them.
Now I want to do a frog marathon tonight.
I'll send you what I got.
Yeah. I mean, if you check them out,
you've got it.
You've got the first 3 episodes, and then if you go to the website, you can see the live videos I did on Facebook. That's actually another part that I didn't really talk about with people, but the Facebook live videos are an additional piece. So, I mean, if you really do want to see more content, there's like 17 live videos that were done throughout the year. And there's also shorts from the episodes and from the field. So there's a lot of cool stuff. If you do watch those 3 episodes and you want to just binge watch other stuff, the way the YouTube channel is laid out, it's like a streaming platform. So it's to help you find the animal or the project or whatever that you're looking for, like right away. So there's like, if you're on like Netflix, or let's say like Amazon Prime, you know what I mean? If you're on Prime, or you're on one of those platforms that has related content and it has like a bunch of genres and everything is in that genre, it's kind of like that. That's the way that we laid out the sections for the channel.
Yeah, in playlists, I guess they call it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, so then we got the pickerel frog, and then you touched on it a little earlier. You're gonna release the bullfrog episode.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Which will be very interesting. I'm gonna have to make sure I got a notification on that set, because I do want to watch that. And then what's after that?
That's what I was asking myself for a while. I'm like, what am I going to do after this? But you get a chance to see events and festivals, and you get a chance. Actually, I showcase at the end of Frog Week. We did find that second population. So I kind of have been sitting on episode 8. I have it, like I have all the footage ready to go. I just got to finish it because there's like last second things that I wanted to add into it. For example, one of the neighbors really close to me, like literally right behind our house, has a pond, and we hadn't connected for years. And I went up there and talked to them, and now that everything is cool and I can go check on the frogs up there, we have like a little wildlife corridor. And I wanted to show that in Frog Week, how now we're going to have even more opportunities for these animals to move freely through 2 different yards with 3 different bodies of water without any roads. So like, how important is that going to be for the wood frogs, the American toads, and even the bullfrogs? So,
are these natural ponds or man-made?
They're man-made, and the artificial pools, of course, I put in. So nothing is natural in these areas. It was old coal mining right next to 2 woodlands. So it's definitely, it used to be a very like busy neighborhood, and it's still, I mean, there's a lot of people in the neighborhood, but like I said, we've got 2 woodlands that are on opposite sides, in our house and now the neighbor's house have the opportunity to help these animals to get from one area back to the other.
Cool.
So yeah, that's a part of it.
That'll be super cool to watch as well.
Yeah, and I show the tadpoles and the vernal pools. I actually show them as they're developing, and you get a chance to see more of the ambassador pets that I have. So, like Esperanza, it was kind of a running thing on Instagram. It was like, oh, he goes to this county, or he goes to that county, or he goes on this show. And it's funny because one frog, and I can give you the main reason why you want to watch episode 7 right now. Esperanza was in my room in quarantine, and he was calling off and on at different times. Didn't think anything of it. And I had been searching in Somerset County for the same species, the gray tree frogs, and hadn't found them. I went 3 times, didn't find them. Where he's from in Cambria, I went like 3 or 4 times. I found them every single time, no issues. But in Somerset, never could find them. So he starts calling, and I start like playing the call back to try to stimulate him, because I try to do that in captivity. And I'm starting to think, well, maybe there's something to him actually calling. What if I would go down to Somerset and actually check out where these gray tree frogs used to exist, or where I think that they still are? And I go down there, and all of a sudden it was completely quiet 3 other times, but this time I actually found the whole population.
Oh, wow.
So he helped me actually to learn how to play the pitch and the tone the right way of the artificial call I was using to get them to call back. But also he was calling whenever they were their most active. So he helped me to find that location. But not only that, days later, I'm thinking, well, could it have been a fluke? Could it have been an incidental thing? So it's late at night, and that's kind of rare. Gray tree frogs don't seem to call as late into the night as the other species. They seem to be more crepuscular, like late evening and early morning. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm just going to get up, and it was late. And I'm going to go down and see if they're still down there, and they're still calling. And they were. So, yeah, he was in tune with the gray tree frogs in a whole different county. Like, if you can want to compare where he was native to, like where he was compared to where I was going, it's probably a 2-hour car ride. And I just found it to be so fascinating that he was blowing their cover hours away.
Mm-hmm. So now I take it that you record his calls on your phone, and then you take it out there, and then you play your phone?
I could. There's there's an app that has frog calls in Pennsylvania. And so it's not available now on any app stores or anything like that, but it was. And on my old phone, I use that and pair it with a Bluetooth speaker, and I'm able to play that so that way other frogs and toads hear it and they'll call back to me. And that's actually how I found the gray tree frog in Somerset County. Was we were out there and it stopped calling because I got close. And this was in Frog Week 2021. You can actually watch the episode. But I either set the speaker down like accidentally right next to the frog, or the gray tree frog came from wherever it was and sat next to the speaker and was having like a call off to see who was louder. So they seem to really respond to that. They must have big egos out in the wild, because they want to be the loudest and they want to be the dominant one. But but yeah, he gets credit for that. He gets the assist for helping me to find them in Somerset, and to even, here's the crazier thing. He helped me to find that they're thriving in a secondary habitat. It's not even a primary habitat.
Meaning?
So they're meaning there were carnivorous plants and bog plants. It was in like a flooded, it's almost like a bog that was right next to the road I'd never seen. I'd never found that for the 2 years that I was out there. So yeah, it was incredible. So you got to watch when episode 7 comes out.
Yeah, that's really intriguing. So he helped. So on that app, there were different calls of his species, and he told you which one of those calls would be more effective.
Well, by playing it and hearing how he did it, then I tried to play it like how he was calling. And when I would do that, when I would get it to the same like length of time, the same trill, or the same, like, just try to make it as similar as possible, he was starting to get more into it. He was starting to call even more intensely. So I'm like, well, this would be useful out in the wild then, because if he's doing it in quarantine, imagine what a wild gray tree frog is going to do when it hears this. So it was pretty awesome. And actually, one of the live Facebook videos shows me down there doing just that, actually playing the call and trying to go to these animals. So that's something that people could actually watch now. after this podcast, and and after, and they could check that out. But that's one part of episode 7. The next part is I went back to the top of the mountain where those wood frog eggs were laid, and I had never found American toads up there, like breeding or anything. Well, that was shattered this year because there was a handful of toads up there, and it was the first time this year that I was able to film toad wrestling, and that was a lot of fun. That was a really epic. I tried to make a scene so epic, even though it's 2 toads wrestling and nothing happens. It's just them hugging and rolling around. But I put in the epic music. I made it look cinematic. I put the like little black bars over it. I got the music to make it look cinematic and like it's an epic fight scene. So I think people are going to have fun with that.
Good. Yeah.
I think you did an amazing job on the audio on the videos, and I think that helps draw your attention in even more. So, yeah, I think you did a really good job with the audio. And the vision, like the production quality, dude. Like I knew I was not going to be able to stop about it this whole episode because it's just that good. But seriously, these are like, you could put them on TV.
National
Quality.
Geographic.
They're in like, they're perfect, like high quality docu-series. It's
excellent.
100% legit. So yeah, I have. It was drawing people in as I was watching and making them stop what they were doing. So that's all. That's all you need. You got it. You got the production figured out, I think.
Well, thank you. You want to know something even crazier? Is at the end of this fall, or maybe even the beginning of the fall, I'm going to get another Sony camera. Finally, I don't want to say upgrade, because the camera I normally use is still going to be like a main camera, but now we're going to have an additional camera, and this one has like stabilization, and it also has animal tracking, and it can crop in. So what I'm talking about is I'm going to probably get the A6700. And it can do 4K 120. So now I can get toad wrestling in slow motion. But yeah, between the 2 of those cameras, it's going to be pretty epic. One thing I wanted to ask you, and I really do appreciate the feedback, by the way. Like I really appreciate that, because I've gotten a lot of criticism over the last few years of doing it. So hearing now, it's a whole different tune that people are telling me, and so I'm really excited to have a quality project here. But there was something that in the first Frog Week was a little controversial, and it finally came back to the 5th year Frog Week. So what was your opinion on the usage of ambassador animals on like the pets? Like did you think they fit into it? Did you think it was taboo? Like where'd you feel?
I think at some point you do have to discuss captive keeping and make sure people are educated on that as well, because then you run into issues of people not understanding completely. And it's one thing to understand animals in the wild, but there's also people who study the wild animals and keep them. So I think that's all a part of education overall. And that's where I stand on it. Everyone needs to be as educated as possible in all aspects. Whether you want to keep a snake, you don't need to know what temperatures they need to be at or anything. But like, people keep them; they're normal animals. Like, So I think it's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm one for ambassador animals a lot. In that, people see animals in the wild, and if they meet some, and then they just want to collect it, and then they don't know what to do with it. But when they meet people that have ambassador animals, then they can talk to this person about how the animal is kept. They realize, well, we'll just enjoy seeing it in your care then, because that's beyond us and giving it the right home. So it helps in meeting the people. I think the more ambassador animals they meet, the less they collect from the wild in realizing that's beyond me and providing that animal the right care. And they would mostly seek getting an animal from a qualified breeder or a person looking to rehome an animal, and I get calls from and messages from people. Do you have turtles for sale? And I said no. Um, and then they say, I want this species, and I always send them to Pet Finder, because Pet Finder has a lot of turtles at various rescue organizations in every 50 state. Turtles and tortoises of tons of different species that they can go to that animal shelter and adopt that animal from there. And so that's where I send them. They have the box turtles, tortoises, aquatic turtles, and usually at a rescue operation, they network with people like me within that area, that if they don't have the personnel of that rescue operation that can tell this person, well, this is how we're keeping it here. You can go to this Rapid City Reptile Keepers Facebook page and learn more from them. And so it just helps having ambassador animals, so that people just don't become enamored with what they see in the wild and just take it home and then kill it.
Yeah.
And so I haven't seen your episode yet on how you add that into your program, but I can already tell you I'm for ambassador programs.
Well, if it makes you feel better, Matt, episode 8, I'm hoping to encourage people to come with me and watch the pet care show after that, because we have a couple of different shows, but the goal is, like episode 8, I want to try and come full center. I've never done this before, but I want to invite the people watching, instead of being like a yearly watcher, just there for Frog Week. Why don't they want to watch like the hiking show or our podcast or our pet care show? And if you really care about like Esperanza, or you like that's his name, or you care about the toads or whoever, like why not watch them? Why not see how I'm doing it, or like what I'm trying to encourage people to do? So there is a sense of that responsibility now that they're a part of Frog Week, like actually trying to find a way to get people to understand they're not pets, but I'll show you how I take care of mine, like what Peggy is already saying.
Yeah. No, and at least there's a way to get frogs captive bred. Like, you don't have to go out to the wild, and you are definitely qualified to teach someone how to care for their first pet frog. Probably no matter what the species is, or at least give them the resources to do so.
And they can learn too. I would love to see an episode, and maybe you have one already, of what happens when you find what happened to Joel and I, an injured toad in your yard that looks like someone had hit it with a weed whacker and lost some of its skin. And so what we did was we laid out food and water for it. Laid out a shallow dish, and then it immediately hopped into the dish, and you could tell it needed some hydration. And then while it was laying in the ditch, I was catching some crickets and some isopods, and I put them in that little shallow water, and it took a cricket, and then and it ate it right away, and then turned to me, like more. I mean, and so it stayed in that area, being fed worms and crickets, and then as its skin healed, it was like just a slight abrasion, it looked like, and then just disappeared on its own. But we decided, like, yeah, I'm staying here where I can hop in and out of this water and take all this free food. And then after, I think it was about 3 weeks, he was gone. But just like how to help out an animal without, and then he decides, like, I'm fine now, I can go back to where I was. That I'd love to see more information on that. I was just winging it.
So episode 8, even though it's not finished yet, that's a part of it. I have 2 agreements with wildlife rehabilitators, and I can go a step further. So what do you do if you find an invasive species, or let's say even, I don't know if this is even a thing, but like an incidental species, like something that comes up, it's not actually invasive, but it's there. And the reason why I say that is because I found a green tree frog around our pond, and they're not even native to Pennsylvania, not even close to where I'm at. So it came in on somebody's plants, or it came in on something, or I'm hoping it wasn't somebody's pet, but regardless.
Like it on my tent. I
Yeah.
took some home on my tent, in my tent. I didn't even know it till I got home, and I was like, uh-oh, these things aren't going to live out here.
Yeah. So, and then I also had a toad during the toad breeding season. I don't think I showed this. I know I didn't show it on that episode. I don't think it's anywhere on Frog Week, but episode 8 shows that toad. He lost a leg, and somehow he was fine. It was a clean cut, so like a predator must have cut his leg off. And he was in the pond trying to breed, and he was starting to like go under the water, and I started noticing like, all right, he's done, like he's cut off. And as a lifeguard, I was on lifeguard duty there for a while, and I knew he was starting to drown, so I got him out, and he's actually where the green tree frog went too. So I can give you the best case, like the best answer, the one that's going to require the most work, and then there's also the answer that most people will probably do. They'll take the easy way out. And I'm not faulting anybody. It's just where you're at morally and what you're able to do with your resources. But what I do is and it's kind of not fair for me to answer this because I have agreements with these places to take the animals. It's a completely different story for somebody who has to find the resources. But, if somebody can actually find a place like Peggy or somebody who will take the animal, or another wildlife rescuer or an education center or something, that's the top, like that would be best case scenario for the animal, because then it can still have a home, or if it can go back after it's been treated, if the injuries aren't too severe, you can re-release that back into the wild like you're already planning to do. So that would be best case scenario. Worst case scenario, if it's a native species and people do this, is you just, and this is kind of rough, but you just leave it there and you just let nature happen. And that's, like I said, I'm not here to fault anybody at the end of the day. I know personally I would try to do everything I could to help it, but I understand that some people are just, that's the way it's going to work. They're just going to walk past it, or they'll move on. And I mean, again, depending on where you stand, they both might be morally correct.
Yeah, and that's, some people won't even stop for turtles and snakes in the road, and Joel and I stop for toads and frogs and get them off the road, and what really kind of burns us is in Custer State Park they have a wildlife loop road, and you're supposed to travel only 25 miles an hour, and you can, when you're traveling that slow, you can see everything that's on the road, and yet there's people that go 40 on that road, act like there's no animals on the road at all. It's like, how can they not see that they just ran over that big snake? And they just keep on going. And this part of the park was made specifically for wildlife viewing, and it's just, you just ask, like, why are you even out here when there is a 3-foot snake right in the middle of the road and you don't stop for it? It's just, you just can't understand. And meanwhile, Joel and I are stopping for frogs and toads. And, so every time Joel goes for work, he still works at the biochem nutritional plant. And, I always say, watch out for snakes and turtles and idiots and storms. That's our, he goes, that's what I say to him every morning, and he takes pictures of the animals that he helps across the road, and checks and make, if there's any ones that have been hit by cars, if they're completely deceased or need to be brought home. But, who the idiots are. It's the one that just ran over the animals. And yeah, but that's our pet peeve, especially on the wildlife loop road. I wish they would post signs that says, do not approach bison. They're dangerous. This kind of thing is, do not run over our animals, please. Let's put that sign up.
You got to get the movement going. If you get it going, they might actually do it.
Yeah. Well, I've got to talk with one of the biologists this week about releasing the turtles there in Custer State Park. And so I'll say, hey, we need another sign on the Wildlife Loop Road. If you see an animal on the road, stop. Safely help it across the road in the direction it was moving. Okay, go on, proceed. So, yeah. Well.
So we got to episode 8. That's kind of your wrap-up episode of Frog Week. You said turtles are next. Is that where the channel's heading next after Frog Week? Or
no, the turtles are not going to be a staple of the channel, but we do want to show people that we found it, or we at least want to talk about it. It's not that I don't like turtles.
Yeah.
It's just that actually this will make Peggy feel good. They actually made it up to my 3rd favorite herp now, because I do find them really interesting, especially the smaller ones. And the wood turtles are actually one of my favorites. But I'm starting to get interested in this map turtle. But I think for me, the stink pot, the musk turtle, is in Pennsylvania. It's my favorite, just because they're so little and they've got such an attitude, so feisty. No, but we want to just show people what's going on. I also want to make the distinction too. So the nonprofit is focused on PA Woods and Forests, like that's the name of it, but that's like what we're doing. So the media brand, which is what I took, I don't know if this happened the last time we spoke, but the media brand, the YouTube channel and the Instagram used to be a part of the nonprofit, but our treasurer is like, I'm not doing taxes. And I wanted to use the money, if we can monetize this stuff, to feed my animals, take them to the vet and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So I created something different and split them up. They come together for Frog Week because the media brand is like, I'm creating the videos, but all the proceeds or anything like that would go towards the nonprofit for this week. So like hypothetically, if I was making money off of the videos, any of the donations or any of the revenue would go and be donated to the nonprofit. We had an actual like a legal agreement that we both had to sit down and sign. So the treasurer was on behalf of PA Woods and Forests, and I was on behalf of Woods and Forests Media.
Okay.
So it is like, when I say like a collaborative project, like you can see both of the logos are in the logo for Frog Week, because that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, no, I had to, my accountant does my corporate taxes for trading for my artwork. And I told him, this rescue, is costing me personal monies, especially the vet bills. And he goes, well, just do a GoFundMe page. And if you start a nonprofit, then you've got, especially here in South Dakota, you have to have a board of directors, and all this kind of stuff. And he goes, just do a GoFundMe page to help pay for the vet bills. I said, okay, yeah, that sounds a lot easier. And so that's what I did. And, I just for this trip I did yesterday, I had to have $170 some for the lab work to make sure they're disease free. And then the actual vet checks, he had to look at each of the 10 animals to make sure that there's no, injuries and any reason that I should keep any other individual longer. But these are all just hatchlings that one juvenile that I saved from last year that had some shell rot, and he says it's good to go. And then all the rest are juveniles that I had hatched from eggs that were rescued from. One was an injured female, and then the other one was a deceased female. So yeah, they're other than nipping each other's tails and then having to divide them into 2 larger tanks so they quit eating one another. It's so they need to go into a big body of water now so they can hide from one another. Because they're quite, even though I was overfeeding them and getting them fat, and just so they would quit nipping at each other's tails, then it's a lot of vet bills, and some with the cracked shells, it's that one is it would require a vet X-ray and then to determine if if we can save it, and then it's the epoxying of the shell, and I go, well, that's a $400 vet bill, and it's just like, I don't have it. And so if right now a turtle comes to me with a cracked shell that is displaced, either I have to figure out how to glue it together myself, or I have to euthanize it because I just don't have the monies to keep rescuing these animals. And so, I mean, that's the sad part of it.
I didn't know if Matt had a question because he looked like he was leaning in.
I thought I did, but I lost it. No, so you're gonna showcase some turtles on your channel. I didn't.
And that's
Is that gonna? So that's not gonna become a part of the nonprofit eventually, or something along those lines?
It could. We'll have to talk about if we want to add the map turtle as a target species now that we found one, and do we want to try and be advocates for it, even though, again, it is abundant and we do focus on herps. But yeah, I mean, it's a possibility. I'm going to add that to the list of animals that we are going to talk about on Friday, because our board meeting is Friday, and we're gonna talk about adding some pollinators already. Like the hummingbird moth is one of them, and actually, even though it's not native, which we're going to have a debate about this, but the leafcutter bee in Pennsylvania, because that's a solitary bee, and the reason why I bring that up is because the leafcutter bee is possibly a food source for frogs and toads, but it's also a heavy pollinator. Like it does a lot of good whenever it's pollinating out in the field, but it's also not native. But the state pushes it out as an insect that you should try to attract. So it's like, well, where do we stand with that? So we're going to kind of have to go through that at the board meeting, if it's going to be a species that's approved or not. But getting back to turtles, so we actually don't have any turtles yet on the list of target species, but I think the map turtle should be on there, since we just I think we have to, in a way, become advocates for it now, because we're the ones who helped to find it in this county, and we know where they're at, or at least one of them. So yeah, I do think that the map turtle is going to make it on. I'm not sure yet about some of the others yet.
Now, I know the map turtles here in South Dakota, they require either smooth moving waters, not more like riverine or creek waters, instead of really quiet ponds or lakes. Is that what you're finding there with this map turtle?
The habitat was described as almost ephemeral, where it fills up with water, it's very deep, and then they think that the turtle just kind of hangs out as the water dries up. He's just sitting there in the mud, just kind of waiting for the water to come back. We haven't gone to see him in the location yet. I mean, we were there, but we just didn't see him. So we're going to try to see if we can get them to go down with us, or if they do see him coming up to bask or whatever. And we're actually not sure yet of the gender. So I mean, that's another thing. I keep saying him, but it could be a female. It's a big turtle, so I'm not sure which gender it is. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't appear that it's. I mean, there is a reservoir about 3 miles away, so I don't know if the turtle is willing to walk 3 miles. If maybe he does, or he has, and that's how he got there. But yeah, there is a big reservoir 3 miles away, but there's a lot of water, streams, and ephemeral pools that are all around this property. So I'm not exactly sure yet what the habitat is for this turtle.
Yeah, or if it was a pet release, like someone who caught it at the reservoir and then turned it loose at the nearest pond. I know that's where the map turtles that exist in South Dakota are all within the Missouri River and its large reservoirs, on that river, because we have a series of dams on that river. But it's, I've not heard of any, and then some of the creek tributaries that, feed into the Missouri River, the larger ones. But they, as far as I know, none of them have been found, in, the small prairie pothole marshes and ponds and dugouts that you find painted turtles and snapping turtles throughout our state. So I've just never seen one in the wild, other than at the campus. And one of the biologists said, like, well, we don't have one on the campus, and I go, well, we took a picture. It's the only keeled, upper dorsal keeled turtle that I know of that is here in South Dakota. So I sent her a picture, and she goes, huh. So I don't know how the map turtle got in their pond, other than a pet placement or something like that. So there was also a yellow-bellied slider there too that we took a picture of, and so people are releasing their pets at the what's called the South Dakota Game Fish and Parks outdoor campus, and there's 3 ponds and a creek and a marsh just on this small acreage in Rapid City, and I think people are using that, and as a place to deposit their animals. But yeah, Joel and I go there to photograph the wildlife and the birds, and there's a beaver there, and which was surprising because it's such a small pond, and the new dog that we had adopted, it saw it was really interested in the beaver until the beaver turned around and slapped its tail, and my dog freaked out and ran underneath, behind my legs, and I looked out. But yeah, to see a beaver in that's what I call a small pond. Some people call it a small lake, but it's not a lake. But yeah, but I'm gonna once I go through seeing all your frog week, I'm gonna really go to the South Dakota Game and Fish and website and see what frogs and toads we're supposed to have here and which ones we're not. And I like to, collect the invasive species and find homes for them, and see. I mean, this toad that we cared for 3 weeks is such their faces are so cute, and we just couldn't wait to see him every morning, and he would always turn to us the way they wiggled and turned. I was like, and looking up at us like, what do you got for me this morning? It's like, and and Joel's like, it's adorable. And I said, yeah, but I really don't know. I said, where, I don't want to bring it in, and it came from somewhere, and I just don't want to set up another habitat because that means there's a turtle that I can't rescue. And so we just, as luckily it wasn't a broken skin. It was just an abrased, like almost like a road rash kind of thing. But yeah, he was doing well and moving well, and he just wanted to be near our water. And so we let him, and then he moved on. I mean, I think there's one pond that he was that a neighbor has that I think he went to go and find his ladies at. So anyway, yeah.
So are there any other species besides the turtle that you've came across that you might think about adding into your
target species list?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, for the nonprofit. Yeah. Mostly right now it's pollinators. The reason why it's not other herps or other creatures is because we have to find populations that we want to help manage. So it'd be wishful thinking for me to add on, which I'd love to add on, the smooth green snake or the 5-line skink or something like that, even the northern leopard frog. But because we don't have them in a population, like what good can we do even if we would just find 1 or 2 of them? If we don't know where they're actually living, then we can't really offer them any help. So not that we have found them yet. They're kind of like on our most wanted list. But yeah, we are hoping at some point that we'll uncover them. And that's a big part of why I've gone on some of these shows and been in the newspapers and stuff, because I want people to send us the information. Like even with the gray tree frogs, even though now the mysteries are starting to unfold in front of us and we're starting to find them in places that they'd never been found before. We want people to keep sending us information, like if they found something that they want me to come check out. And that's a part of like the property visits. I'm building habitat, but I'm also going out to evaluate properties to see if stuff's out there. And that's like really cool because there's not a lot of organizations that do that, like the state. and other organizations. And I don't know, I think that's a big part of it. So a good example is like Jeremy Wade. Are you guys both familiar with him on Animal Planet? He's on River Monsters or Dark Waters or whatever.
Yes.
So he is a great detective. He goes to the bars, he goes to talk to the neighbors, knows somebody that knows somebody, and that's how it's actually done. I mean, that's how it's been done for all of the species that we found. The spotted salamander we found was double clutching in one county where it's actually declining. So that was pretty neat. I can't include this in any scientific data, but I found American toads and pickerel frogs were using a bridge between two counties to get to breeding grounds and going to habitats outside of the breeding grounds. So, I mean, we've had some novel discoveries. They're not necessarily groundbreaking nationally, but these are things that are really interesting to know about. And some of the stuff I can include in research papers.
Nice. Yeah. Now, do you have colleges contact you because they have students that are graduating and they want to attract master students, and that you're a treasure trove of answers that they want to find the questions to? It's you have these finds, and then they want, which then brings up all kinds of questions that they could set up research projects for.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. That's really kind words. Right now, we haven't had any interest yet from any of the colleges. I'm still a grad student until May, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it because I'm already a grad student, but I would love to partner and work with some different schools to go and have volunteers, or if they want to incorporate some of the work, like the field work that we're doing, into their thesis or any type of research at all. I would be more than happy to help anybody out there who's looking at these animals and wants to do something with them. So I mean, that's one thing that I'd like to do with PA Woods and Forests next. So we're citizen science and we're outreach, but I'd really like to turn us also into a research organization where maybe I can start pit tagging some of these animals. Like I was talking today to somebody who came to a meet and greet, and the idea of pit tagging female American toads to see how many years they're able to come back to the pond or they pass away. I mean, that'd be invaluable to know, like, is this a matriarch female who's just, routinely coming and we're having her offspring continue to be produced. And I mean, that's what you want. You can do it to the males, but males come a dime a dozen. The females, they're significantly fewer of them. Mm-hmm. So that's just one thing that I was thinking of. Same thing with the wood frogs, because those are the two target animals around where I live. But we could do the same exact thing on some of these posted properties with the gray tree frogs for the females. So I mean, that's just one thing that I'm interested in doing.
Now, why are there less females than males?
That's just the way naturally that they occur in the wild. So there's a lot of competition for the mating season. It just seems that, like, for example, wood frogs, I think there are 7 males to 1 female, and that's just, I guess, how they come out. I don't know. That's a good question to ask, if they come out of the eggs and more eggs are male typically. I mean, that could be one answer. Another thing could be, are males surviving at a much higher rate than females do in the wild? There's a lot of interesting things to think about. And then for like bufonids, I think it's the females have an organ that they can turn into a male if there's not enough males around.
Wow.
So buffonid toads have, it's like called the Bidler's organ or the Bidder's organ, something like that. They're one of the few species that can change their sex and literally reproduce if they have to survive. So, I mean, I've never seen that, at least from a physical description, because there's so many males and females. But I think that's probably a well-rounded answer of possibly why there's more males than females.
Yeah, because I know with turtles, the wood turtle is chromosomally sexually determined. Once the egg is laid, it's going to be a male egg or a female egg. But with painted turtles, snapping turtles, the temperature that they're incubated at will determine whether they are male or female. And so with my clown gene that a breeding partner and I are trying to reproduce is, to try to see this animal come out in the brother line. The clown herself isn't ready to breed yet. She's kind of I'm getting some really good growth on her right now, finally. But I've got an incubator going for at 87 degrees Fahrenheit, 30 degrees centigrade for female. And then I've got a male incubator at 79 max temperature at 80 to produce males. And, because we're trying to get, a 2-to-1, 2 females to 1 male ratio out of the get of the clown's possible head brother. And so, I'm just wondering if with the frogs, if temperature has anything to, the temperature of the water and the nights have anything to do with temperature selected sex determination, I guess they call it. That's a Google for me tonight.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question.
Yeah, interesting. So I'm writing down all these things of what I want to Google as I watch frog. And probably some of this stuff that I'm writing down is you answer, and so it's I was going to ask you, do you gut load the prey that you feed to your captive frogs? Really, in other words, just I don't know if you feed crickets to any of them, that you feed the crickets a lot of vitamins and minerals before then you feed the crickets or whatever insect to the frogs.
Yeah, that's something that actually helped all of this to even begin. It's kind of funny because we're going full circle here, but like my female toad Ace, who I think we talked about the last time, I had to feed her differently because I was using all these vitamins and all these supplements and it just wasn't working. And the vet that I took her to said, hey, like there's a research study done on American toads about their nutrition. And so they used all these different formulas, all these different gut loads and supplements and everything else. And they found that the Missouri Betterbug gut load, and I think the aquatic turtle diet and a chicken feed as well. There were 3 different things that actually worked. But it gave them the proper nutrition that they needed out in the wild. And if you gut loaded the insects that they eat, like the mealworms, the crickets, the roaches, one thing that's a little bit taboo, but I also am going to try to start an ant colony from captive ants. But anyway, if you feed that gut load to these creatures and then your frogs and toads eat it, it's supposed to be like the best of the best for them to give them the nutrition that they need. And I've found that I can make an animal gain a lot of weight. I can have an animal take a lot of weight off. I can keep them active and healthy. And like I seem to have very, very big, like large animals too. So they're growing. So I know there's a lot of good things that are coming out of using the gut load. Ace is 7 years old now. So she would have died 5 years ago had I not used this gut load. So, I mean, I'm not a spokesperson for Missouri and I'm not going to just be a brown noser to the vet. But I mean, I have to look at, the results. And if those results weren't adequate, then my animals wouldn't be in the state that they're in.
Interesting. Now, do you post that somewhere, or do you, on what you have found it to be most successful?
This is kind of sad that I have to say it like this, but so I think you guys are both on the Frog and Toad Facebook group, and it's a little disheartening because I'm somebody who's in the field. I see these animals, I work with these animals, I'm doing a lot of like in-field research with them, and so I can come back and tell you a lot of good things to do in the captivity, like in captivity in the captive setting, and I try to offer that advice, and it just seems like it's falling on a lot of times deaf ears. Like people don't care. Like I can recommend that gut load, and some new people who are like just getting into it, yeah, you can reach them. But there's a lot of people who've done it their way. The toads are going to die in a year to 3 years. And then they say, oh, he died of natural causes. And, that's the end of it. And it's like, no, he didn't die of natural causes. Toads can live for like 40 years. You screwed up. Like, and like, there's a lot of people that come on and they try to say, well, this is how I do it. And this is what I want to do. So I do see being in a leadership role, you kind of get demonized, or it's kind of like whoever's president, you're going to hate him because he's president, regardless on how you feel about anybody. Like anybody that gets in there to office, like they all of a sudden just get a million enemies. And it's kind of like that whenever you also have some type of a platform, and being the admin, the guy on there for the Facebook group, naturally there's just going to be somebody who wants to argue or who wants to say that they're a know-it-all. So it's disheartening because we could really be helping save some of these animals, but only a fraction of the people who actually see the posts are actually using it.
Do you have your own podcast or one of my a blog that you've got? That you could post most of these things to, and you get the people that are specifically seeking you out for information. I find the blogs work better, even though they've become out of date, so to speak. But one of my favorite blogs is put out by I can't think of Chris Leone and Casey Leone on Garden State Tortoise. They have their blog that really gives great information, and then they don't have to put up with arguing with people who just like to argue. Do you have such a blog of that nature?
Yeah, if you go to pawoodsandforests.com, we have a blog where, so this is featuring the main enclosure for the media brand. So it's a collaborative blog, just like Frog Week is a collaborative episode or project. Yeah, so there's a section on there for the 240 gallon. And I don't know, Matt, if you're getting to that point where you're going to ask me about it, but it'll appear in episode 8. I don't have it done, but I have it behind me. That's why I have the background up so people can't see it yet. But yeah, I am giving it all out there. And once I graduate, I do want to write care sheets for some of these animals. And maybe that's a supplement as to some of the ways I can afford some of the vet bills and feeding them too, and also giving people adequate care. I could have pages for a lot of these native species, like pages on pages, and it's good stuff. It's not just like fillers and, random things that people are going to get bored of reading. Some people, if you want to know natural history and you want to hear about like case studies, then this stuff would really interest you. And field surveys and field studies. Like there's so much I'd bring into it for all these different species. But anyway, getting to the tank and getting to the information, this is going to be the most unbelievable native species enclosure probably ever created. It's a 241 gallon. It's 6 foot 9 inches by 23 by 30 inches high. It's going to have 2 biomes. It's going to have a woodland and also a bog. So there's going to be like that middle area where they meet.
Wow.
They're trying to see if these animals are going to have preferences, like individual preferences and species preferences. There's going to be rescued American toads and wood frogs, carnivorous pitcher plant that's native, all native plants that I've been propagating for years. And I've also gotten some sustainably, but I really try to avoid that. But anyway, this tank is going to be a teaching point for everybody. We can teach people what happens with invasive species if I start introducing plants that aren't from the area. What does that do to the environment and to the animals? What about insects? It's harder with them because the variety of feeders are usually exotic. But if we look at that, how are the frogs and toads handling eating invasive insects? Because that is sort of what they would do in a suburban neighborhood. You think of like stink bugs and like German cockroaches and even the lanternfly. Like some of these insects could be a good example of why frogs and toads are important to have around your house. Another thing is pollution. I've always kicked around this idea of like having a gas station or some business donate like clean buckets or bins or like cups and stuff like that you throw away that people dump out the window. And filming that in an up close and personal perspective, you see Ace, who's the main character in the story, like coming out of a gas station grocery bag. That might hit home for people, like, oh, maybe they'll feel bad about like throwing that out the window. So, I mean, there's so much of a teaching point here, and like Ace is going to be living with a few more American toads, and she hasn't seen an American toad in her tank in years. So, like, how do we talk about the competition of frogs and toads in captivity, but also in the wild, because they do compete in the wild, despite people thinking that they just live solitary lives and never see another frog like they do. There's just so much. I mean, the tank's going to have its own weather. I'm trying to replicate thunderstorms and like
Wow.
foggy days and cold fronts and full moons, like all kinds of stuff. And I'm trying to actually propagate plants in there that are going to fruit. So like blueberries and cranberries that are native to the state. Also, probably the craziest thing. So I've been telling different places this. I do want to bring it up here too. Are you guys familiar with the oyster mushroom?
No.
So it's like what they put on pizza or like.
Yeah.
Okay, so apparently I didn't know this until like the last month. It's a native species to where I'm from, and like this will be a climate controlled room where this tank is, and it apparently thrives in the exact conditions that I want to provide for this tank. So I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Like I could grow a mushroom and I could propagate that mushroom and even sell it. But this is where it gets even crazier. So in captivity, the frogs and toads that are wild still maintain their parasites, even if you get them dewormed. So you have to keep deworming them. But there's a mushroom, the oyster mushroom, it eats supposedly one of the parasites that is plaguing my frogs and toads. It eats nematodes, so like a microscopic worm. And the thought is, if I can grow this mushroom in this tank and the spores will spread through the soil, it might actually kill off a high load of these parasites.
Oh, nice.
So it's like the vet actually might want to do a research study with me on this. I mean, this could have actually replaced a thesis for how interesting this could turn out. Because imagine for zoos and like other organizations, if all they need to do is grow mushrooms with their toads or their frogs, and they don't have to use like ivermectin or something, to deworm them. I mean, that could be a real game changer for how we keep these animals.
Yeah. That and you have excuse me, outreach with your organization. I would say your outreach could also be with, like I said previously about the universities, like saying, hey, we've got all these things that can be topics of papers. Get a hold of us if you've got students looking, for a topic for a paper. I think that would bring, a lot of traffic and credibility. Networking with the universities with that, and I'm talking, universities even outside your state, because
Yeah.
there's always, the administration of universities are always looking for research, for their students, and if they say we've got a list of these topics that need answers to, and these are the persons you can contact to help you derive that paper, blah blah blah. That just, yeah, it's just a wealth, of services, so yeah, so besides actually helping the species, actually helping with the education too.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to do that. This is an open invitation to anybody who's watching this to reach out and ask me questions, or if they want to work with me. Like, I'm coming on here doing some detective work, right? Like we were talking about finding species, well, making connections too. If somebody's interested in working together on some of these projects, or if they have questions, I'd be more than happy to answer. But I did want to say too, that this project I was just describing is going to be filmed like it's a cinematic documentary. So Matt was raving about Frog Week. Well, I actually bought a cinema camera a couple years ago, and I bought a cinema lens for this project, like even a slider. Like I bought like high level stuff, so that way I could tell this story like it's from BBC America or Animal Planet or whatever. So that's something you have to look forward to, is not only am I going to get the new camera, but the cinema camera that I haven't even used yet is also going to be a main camera for this project. So it's going to incorporate Frog Week and also what I'm doing with the media channel, because this tank is going to be a media channel exclusive, which means the nonprofit doesn't necessarily have a say with it. We could work together, but it's my thing. But we're going to follow the animals that are the main characters, along with doing Frog Week next year. We're going to try to follow them throughout the year and use that for the episodes whenever when the project launches. So whenever the first episode is of this, it's going to be called Through the Woods. It's the flagship project for the media brand for the YouTube channel. Whenever it launches, we want to have that data. We want to have that, like, the whole goal is we want to show people how the animals and the plants are reacting to the change throughout the seasons and how do they handle that. So we're going to try to be following the wood frogs, the American toads, the pitcher plants, and that'll be easy because plants don't move, but at least they shouldn't. And these other things too, it'd be really sweet to find the mushrooms in the wild. But yeah, I mean, that's what we're going to try to do. And then show what's happening in the wild, try to replicate that in the tank.
Are you going to have a live cam on that tank periodically?
Yeah. So I actually just talked to somebody. We had a think tank at work, and probably shouldn't have, but we were doing it at work because there's people really excited about this too. And they're like, it would be a heck of an idea, Aaron, is if you got a live cam and allowed people, like, let's say that, Matt is having a really stressful time and he can't fall asleep for whatever reason. Well, he might have the chance to go and watch what's going on in the tank at 2 or 3 in the morning, and maybe it'll relax him seeing the animals just like hanging out. Or let's say I want to get on live and show people like a feeding video, or like just letting showing the animals doing their daily thing. Or maybe I want to show you like a really cool weather system, like making a thunderstorm or a low front or like a low pressure or something move through the tank, or a full moon. So, I mean, there's a lot of possibilities, and the goal is kind of like the zoos and like these other places like Eagle Watch, you can see the nest as the babies are growing and stuff. Well, I think that's a cool idea. And not only the camera I'm using now, like the webcam, but I can also use the new camera that I'm going to get in the fall as a second webcam. So I can broadcast from 2 different cameras to show people like different perspectives of the tanks. So, there's a lot of thought that's been put into this.
Sounds like it. That sounds fun.
Yeah, hopefully you guys will, want to join and watch it. Or
yeah,
I'm super excited about it. I can't believe I was spacing it. That was something that I've been excited about for a while, since you talked to us about it the first time, actually.
Yeah. Well, when my brain won't shut down, what I do is I go to Google. I'll put in landscape pond, and then just look at all these pictures of ponds that are being built in people's backyards or whatever, and it just relaxes me. Or pictures of turtles, or just something I don't have to think about, but just look at, and then my eyes like, oh, okay, I'm ready to sleep. And so this live cam, of a aquatic forest habitat, that'd be fun to just sit and watch that, and yeah, I think it will relax and de-stress, and regardless of what time it is.
Yeah.
I'd love to do a video series on the tank. I think that's an awesome concept and a great idea, and it's evergreen too, so it's never gonna go out of fashion. It'll be good 10 years later if you make it good now. So.
Yeah. I'm hoping to accomplish that a little bit with like the pet care show, because one of the things I'm trying to do, along with like trying to add in reviews and like care tips and stuff like that. I mean, I mostly started out by just featuring the animals in the tanks. So to me, it's harder to do the other things that most people probably find easy, or like what they start with. So I'm kind of backwards, because like the whole, like everything that I've done for years was just, I wanted to show people what's going on in the tank. So getting those good shots and like the amazing B-roll of the animals, especially if you watch the last like 4 videos from Wild Vivariums in season 3, that is some of the best footage I've gotten. and it's a really awesome show, and I'm trying to get people to watch more of it. But yeah, this other project, Through the Woods, I mean, it's gonna be fun. It's and I didn't even talk about this part too. I'm hoping, knock on wood, this is kind of the last part that I don't have shored up, but I'd really like to make this a hybrid tank where I can power some of it through an electric, like a solar generator. Like 71% of the electricity or the energy would be powered through this generator. So I'm hoping that I can also create this as like a talking point for some keepers to potentially switch over to solar energy, which some places you can do it, some places you can't. I get that. I'm hoping I can accomplish that. But yeah, I'm actually hoping to make this one of the first hybrid enclosures for energy as well. Not, I think there's a need for both, but I'm just saying, like, if I can do it, why not try and like actually accomplish it?
Yeah, and it takes people succeeding with it for other people to want to do it.
Well,
and if no one's gonna try it, then it's never gonna see the light of day anyway. At least for another, till someone has success and does it.
Yeah.
You know, especially when you're talking about electricity and the animals, like, I don't know, solar energy is safe, but you know what I mean.
yeah, if you can come up with a way for to have solar energy with an area that gets 1 to 2 inch hail once a week, you know, I'm trying to figure out. Joe goes, well, there's a thing called, where it flowers, and then there's your panels. It monitors the weather, and then it closes up for when
That's
the hail.
a cool idea.
Yeah, and I said, oh, well, that could work in our area. Plus, the vertical axis wind turbines, would work, and so they spin this way rather than have large blades that go around. And so my relatives over in Germany and the Netherlands, they tell me what they use, and I go, well, how big is your hail? She goes, oh, we have really bad hailstorms about once every 10 years. I go, what size is your really bad hail? And they go, pea size. I said, that's not, we don't even consider that hail. We consider that sleet. So then I tell her, that, we've had softball size hail every decade here at Rockerville. And, a lot of ping pong size hail. We can't even count how many times that happens. And it's like, how do you have solar panels with weather like that?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah,
that's
so
a
we're
really good point.
do you have solar panels that here they are, and then they switch, and now they have an end that, or the backside can be hit, and then they switch back for when the bad weather's passed. Like, what can we do here?
Let me ask you guys this, because this is a real thing. Like, I'm listening right now for Frog Week 2024. There's some possibilities. Oh yeah, she's really listening now.
Yeah, I hear something. I have to make sure I don't have a fire in the other room. One moment.
Oh, that's intense.
Yeah.
She's going to look for frogs.
Oh.
Nope. It was
Frog Week of 2024.
It was outside.
Oh. Yeah, I want to ask you guys. So this is kind of I don't know if you want to call this a leak or not, but I'm asking some of the podcasters and some of the media. I've already asked the media, so I know where their thoughts are with this, but you guys are the first podcasters I'm asking, so you should feel somewhat excited because you might contribute to a real thing for the next Frog Week. If I'm to hypothetically release the first episode of Through the Woods, there's some thought that the media brand is going to get its own time slots in Frog Week next year. So, like, to give you an example, the last 5 years, it's all been PA Woods and Forests. Like, all of the videos are owned by the nonprofit. Like, that's their thing. But there might be a possibility now that it's a collaborative project that I can include, like, my pet show for an episode and Through the Woods, like this tank. So would you guys be more interested in that project coming out coinciding with Frog Week, possibly even being the main episode next year? Or since you guys have guests on, or would it be more interesting to you if it had its own space, if it was like on its own? I mean, there's going to be like at least 5 episodes, so it's not just going to be a one and done, like it'll just come out for Frog Week. But for the premiere and for it being the first time in 5 years, people are going to get a chance to see what I've been working on. I don't know, like where do you guys think it should go for a time slot?
Wow, that's I'm flattered, and I'd really like to plan this with you. I mean, it sounds it's exciting. Um, I think we
Maybe
need.
I feel like it might be helpful to have something like every 6 months, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but like, what I'm saying is, should I release the first episode during Frog Week next year, or should it be on a different time schedule? Because I'm going to have 5 episodes, and I'm going to try and coincide them with the seasons, but I'm going to need time for the first episode. I can't release it in March if I'm still trying to get data out in the field. So, would you prefer to see it happening during Frog Week, the first episode? Do you think that'd create more buzz for Frog Week? Or would you think that would you rather see it as a fan, would you rather see it have its own inaugural day that it comes out?
I kind of like really showcasing and wowing up it as a unique feature to me.
A Frog Week, yeah. Is
So
that what you're saying?
I'm for having, it be separate of Frog Week. I mean, oh boy, it's hard to say.
To keep, I think I get where you're going. I would break it and go and release it in like February.
The first episode?
Yeah, like when you're 6 months away from releasing Frog Week again, when all the buzz is off of that, and the spring is going to start though, but you still need to create interest in your business. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so. It keeps you having more excitement through the
through the year.
Through most of the year.
That's what I would think.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are that if it only gets 1 episode during Frog Week, the very first one, and then there's 4 other episodes that are going to come out after Frog Week, no matter like when, they could come out months after, they could come out in the winter. I'm not exactly sure what the time slot's going to be, but you're going to get the same 5 target species, even though the bullfrogs, but it would get its own featured episode, like 1 episode.
They'd get 1 episode premiere on Frog Week. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I'd do that. I just wouldn't run them concurrently together.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you want to keep that hype for throughout the year in some way when you're kind of slow on filming or something.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure the winter there is not amazing.
No, it's not like South Carolina.
No, but it's not like South Dakota, I bet, either. But it's closer to that.
Yeah. So I mean, the media has been very interested. They want me to make that the target, like the main episode next year for Frog Week, and it's interesting. I'm not opposed to it, but I want to hear what everybody's thoughts are, because you guys are going to be the ones that I'm going to go to ask you if you want to cover it again.
Yeah.
So, if it's something that's going to create buzz, and I don't tell people what episode it's going to come out in, like, is it going to be episode 8 or 9 at that time, or is it going to be episode 1? Like, what am I going to do with it? That's going to create some buzz. And if the media brand has 2 episodes in Frog Week as well, I think we're really going to start to hit it on different angles from different perspectives. So I know that I can confirm 1 video. Wild Vivariums will get 1 video in Frog Week next year. So there will be probably 9 videos next year for what we're looking at. But yeah, I mean, I'm open to the idea right now. If that's what it'll take for some of the media to want to cover this, is the tank, then I mean, I'm kind of taking a straw poll with the media, and I consider you guys a part of the media. So when I go back to do the planning and talk to people about this, I can say, hey, like, this is where we stand. This is who and how many people said this or that whenever I talk about it.
Yeah, well, I think the tank is going to be so well received that people are going to demand more of it. So I mean, it is going to have to have its own playlist. For
Yeah,
sure.
well,
and as long as you're keeping your production the way it is on the episodes Frog Week that I've watched, like, you've got this. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah,
because they're just as good as the documentaries you can pull up on YouTube.
I
Just
appreciate
Google
that.
YouTube documentary and pick a wildlife one, and that's very similar. So they're in the 20-minute time slot instead of the 45, which is fair because you're releasing one a day for a week. So that's still a lot of video a week or a day even. So yeah.
I'll take note of that.
Sorry, my dog keeps knocking my table.
Well, where can we find all your videos, reach out to you, all of that stuff?
Well, I think the nonprofit's website right now is very hot because there's events that are happening. People can see if I'm on a news media show or if I'm like going to be at a place in Pennsylvania for a meet and greet. And then Frog Week has like its own tab. That's sort of what I'm describing too. People can see the Facebook Live videos and the YouTube shorts, and even the episodes haven't yet been put on the website, but you'll get there. It will take you to the website so you can see the stuff. The media brand is where the feature episodes for Frog Week are happening. So the Woods and Forests media brand, same thing, like my name on Instagram and on YouTube, they're the exact same name. So people could type that in and they would be able to see the videos.
Awesome. I want to thank you for coming on.
Yes.
We'll get to me and Peggy's plugs in a second, but thanks for coming on again. I'm happy to have been a part of Frog Week.
Yeah.
They made my week. The week I got them. So
I'm really thankful that you enjoyed them, and that I got the chance to share with you. I'm really happy, and Peggy, we'll definitely get you on the list for next year.
Yeah,
you get to see them early too and preview and kind of talk to me about what's going on, because Matt had the chance to look at them and give me some advice or tell me whatever, and then like I still had 4 to make, so it's like whatever Matt's saying, I could go back and I could like tweak it a little bit for the future episodes. So that's what I gave people the authority to do this year in a way. And it, I think it's turned out really well. So,
yeah. Well, I now that I'm going to, and I know Joel will enjoy this too. And he is a photographer, and he's been, one of his videos has gone viral on Facebook of a buffalo calving, and he's been asked to do more videography, and so I know that he'll enjoy watching these with me, and we can always send you like, oh, we want to see more of this and we want to see more of that.
That's what I like. Yeah, I like when people are asking to see more stuff. Then I know what I need to do.
Yeah. Well, excellent. So that'll be what we'll start the evening off with tonight, is some episodes, and sometimes Joe goes, let's save it for the weekend. Yeah, exactly. So we can start tonight.
Hey, make sure you comment and you're liking, right? That's what all YouTubers should be saying, right?
Right.
But no, the more
I think
comments
of us as a podcast more.
Yeah, no, I get it. The more that you guys comment, it gets pushed out to more people. So the more reactions, that's what we're hoping. We're hoping to do that. And I'm not spoiling anything here at the very end, but I'll tell you guys, there are some decently large places that are looking to partner now with the nonprofit after Frog Week. And I have to make sure we can guarantee the partnerships before I announce it, but I'm really excited that we have a few partners that are looking to help magnify this for next year, and they're looking to help build this. Uh,
Excellent.
so bigger names, much bigger names that want to be a part of it.
Great. Congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Exciting.
You
Okay.
put in a lot of work. Well, Pegs, where can people find you at?
At Black Hills Turtle Forum on Facebook and on Instagram, Detmer's Studios. And yeah, just those two places, as I'm mostly working outside with all the rescues. And then here at Herp Talk Radio.
And as for me and the podcast, it's Herp Talk Radio on Instagram. We have a Facebook group. Everyone that I know, I think, who has been on the podcast is in the group.
Yeah, I joined.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure everyone's there. Pretty sure. Not 100%. I don't use Facebook all that much. Anyway, email herptalkradio@gmail.com. Other than that, have a good night, evening, whenever you're listening. We'll talk to you later.